driving through the country to visit their family. One day, late at night, they were on a lonely country road. That's when a powerful storm broke, and their car tire burst. They had to leave the vehicle to find help, but there was nothing, and no one around. Sometime later, they came across an old and spooky mansion that seemed abandoned, but the guys decided to try and see if anyone lived there and could help them. They arrived at the mansion gate. On a metal address plaque, it was written, "The House of Riddles." Gemma and Andy got suspicious, but they desperately needed shelter from the storm and some help with their car. So they decided to enter. But the gate was locked. There was a digital security keypad on it and nothing else. Suddenly, they heard a sound coming from the gate intercom. A voice said,
"The answer to this riddle of mine is the password you need to unlock the gate. I sleep by day and fly at night, but I have no feathers to aid my flight. What am I?"
"That's a bat." When the guys arrived at the door, they saw there was something engraved on it. "Stop right there, wanderer. Don't knock on the door just yet. For if you knock more or fewer times than you should, that you're gonna regret. Here's your second riddle. I am an odd number, but I become even if you take away a letter. What am I?" Gemma and Andy realized that the number equaled the number of times they had to knock on the door for it to open. Can you help them figure out the correct number? The answer is 7, so they had to knock on the door 7 times. A scary old butler opened the door and let the guys in. The door suddenly closed behind their backs and then just vanished into thin air. There were no doors in the room they had entered. The butler said, "Welcome, mortals, to your doom. To make it out of this house, you have to solve every riddle in every room. If you can't, you'll stay in this place forever. Here's your riddle for this room. Which bride is marrying this groom?" If they managed to figure out the answer, a door would appear. If they could not, well, too bad. Do you see the shadows behind them? The third bride's shadow is holding hands with the groom's shadow. They're in love, so she must be his chosen one. After they had answered the riddle correctly, a door appeared in front of them. They got into the next room, which was a library. 3 books fell from a bookcase in front of their feet. Then they heard the butler's voice echoing, "You have to open one of these books, but choose wisely, because whatever creature the book mentions, it will appear here." If Gemma and Andy opened the first book, a venomous basilisk would come out. If they opened the second book, a giant piranha monster with razor-sharp teeth would appear in the library. If they opened the third book, a fire-breathing dragon would charge at them. Which book should they choose? Since the giant piranha is a water creature, it can't survive on land, so the guys should choose the second book. The library door opened, and they walked into the next room. It turned out to be a dining room. A large mirror covered one of its walls. Yet, the reflection of the room in the mirror had some differences from the real room. Can you spot them? The reflection of the deer statue in the mirror has more antlers. In the reflection, you can see someone hiding behind the curtains. But there's no one besides Gemma and Andy in the room. And lastly, in the mirror, one of the plates on the table is different from the others. But in the real dining room, all the plates are the same. Gemma and Andy felt very hungry. Thankfully, the next door that opened led them to the kitchen. There were 3 different chefs inside. The first chef was a zombie, the second one was a vampire, and the third chef was human. Each of them was holding a pie in their hands, but only one pie was safe to eat. Which one? Do you see the bugs coming out of the zombie chef's pie? Yikes! The pie that the human chef is holding is glowing in a weird way. Looks dangerous to me. So they should choose the vampire chef's pie, because that's not blood, that's cherry sauce on top. If it was blood, the vampire would have already eaten that. After they answered the riddle, 2 doors appeared in front of them. One of them had Gemma's name on it, and the other had Andy's. The butler sneaked behind the guys and pushed Gemma through the Gemma door, and Andy through the Andy door. Gemma fell down a pit and found herself in a mysterious garden. She accidentally woke a garden gnome who had been sleeping. He got very angry with her, and still, he agreed to let Gemma go if she answered his question correctly. He showed Gemma 3 tiny mushroom houses and asked which one was his home. Can you figure it out? Do you see the flower on the gnome's hat? The door handle of the second mushroom house handle is the same flower, so that must be his home. Andy, on the other hand, fell into a magical dungeon. The dungeon guard was an ogre, and he looked very pleased to finally have a prisoner. Yet he agreed to let Andy go if the guy chose the correct magical portal to escape. 2 magical portals appeared in front of him. Each of them led to a room. Andy had to stay inside the room of his choice for 5 minutes. The first room was full of poisonous gas that would knock him out in 4 minutes, and the second room was filled with water. If Andy opted for this room, he would have to be chained to the floor with the water rising really fast. In which room can the guy survive? Andy should choose the first room. He should take a breath and try not to breathe for a minute. After that, he'll have to wait for 4 minutes for the door to open, and then he can escape. Both Gemma and Andy were magically transported to the hallway after having answered their riddles correctly. They were happy to be together again. At the end of the hallway, there was a door, and in front of the door, a witch stood. She placed 3 long magic wands on the table in front of her and said,
You do not need to do anything to one of these wands. One you must break in half, and one needs to be even shorter than that half.
The witch added that they could only answer once, and if their answer was wrong, she wouldn't open the door. So, can you tell which wand should be the longest, which one they need to break into half, and which one needs to be the shortest? Do you see those spiders hanging from the ceiling? Since the door is shaped like a spider, they must be giving Gemma and Andy a hint. The silk thread that the first spider is hanging on is the shortest, so the first wand needs to be the shortest. The silk thread that the second spider is hanging on is the longest, which means that the second wand needs to remain as it is. And the silk thread that the third spider is hanging on is of a medium length, which means that the guys need to break the third wand in half. The witch opened the door and Gemma and Andy entered a bedroom. 3 spirits were floating inside. Each of them claimed to be the owner of the mansion. Gemma knew only one of them was telling the truth. Who is it? The spirit of the elderly lady is telling the truth. Why? Let's rewind a bit. Did you notice the portraits hanging on the walls in the hallway? There's a portrait of this very lady. That can only mean she used to be one of the owners of the mansion. The next stop was a living room. When they walked in, Andy saw something weird. What was it? A face appears and disappears in the fireplace. The guys entered a study next. What's so weird here? The fingers of this medieval knight's armor are tapping on the sword. The next room was a guest bedroom. What's weird here? The crystal ball is showing someone trapped in the basement. Gemma and Andy decided to take a look at the basement in case someone really needed help. Yet they had to crack another riddle to enter. There was a password panel, and they needed to type in 7 digits to unlock the door. They had no idea what the passcode could be. Luckily, there was a note on the wall, and this word was written on it. What does it even mean? Turn the note upside down. What do you see now? The letters look like numbers, right? So the passcode is 1837837. There were 3 people in the basement who claimed to be trapped there, but only one of them was telling the truth. Who is that? Do you see the stitches on the elbows of this lady? She's a creepy rag doll, so she's lying. And this man has claws instead of fingers. He must be a shapeshifter or something. Then it must be this guy who's telling the truth, so Gemma and Andy took him with them. After the guys answered every riddle in every room correctly, the butler appeared again. "Thank you, travelers. Now you're free to go, but this you must know. All of us in this house are cursed. Answer this one last riddle for the curse to be reversed. Once we are finally free, we'll help you with your car too. You'll see. There are 9 people in front of you. One of them is a monster who cursed us. Tell us who." This guy has 2 horns that are hiding in his hair. He is not a human. He's a monster. Look at the picture very attentively. Can you tell which prisoner is rich? The first one is sewing something. She must be working as a seamstress. She probably isn't that rich. The second one has some pieces of jewelry. But in the second place where the prisoners are, the golden chains don't mean much. The third one is reading quietly and doesn't cause any trouble. That's a rich person's behavior. They usually don't want to attract attention, especially in jail. It was November, but Jasmine already had some bad grades at school. So, her mother, Mrs. Lawrence, grounded her until Jasmine improved her grades. Mrs. Lawrence worked night shifts and had to leave for work. One day, when she returned home, she realized that Jasmine had sneaked out at night to go to a party. How did Mrs. Lawrence understand it? It's fall. The car is parked right under the tree, but unlike their neighbors' cars, it's not covered in leaves. It means Jasmine had just returned home after the night party. Vienna was wandering in a forest and came across a huge and spooky mansion. When she walked in, the door behind her back got locked. It was an old magician's house. He didn't like when strangers visited his mansion. Soon, Vienna saw 3 drinks on the table. The yellow one would allow the girl to live for a month without water or food. The purple one would make her the size of an index finger for an hour. The blue one would give her a lion's strength for half an hour. Which one should she drink? The purple drink. She'll become small and she'll be able to escape through that little cat door. Esme was walking in the forest, but she got lost. Soon, the girl found the witch's house, entered it, petted the cat, and asked if the witch could send her home. The witch had just gotten a new laptop and a 3-digit password. She asked Esme to figure out what it was. Esme made 4 guesses: 357, 902, 907, 954. Obviously, she didn't get it right. The witch gave her a hint. Each of Esme's guesses had 1 correct digit, and it was exactly in the right place. What's the password? The first digit can't be 9, so it's 3. Then, the second and third digits can't be 5 and 7, so the second digit must be 0, and the third one is 4, which means the code is 304. Sailor and Evie were best friends who wanted to spend the winter vacation together. Unfortunately, Sailor's grandmother fell ill, and she had to go to another city to be with her. Evie was missing her friend. Once, she was walking past her empty house. Soon, Evie realized that Sailor had lied to her about the grandma and was actually at home. How did Evie understand it? Look, it's been snowing that day, but there's no snow near Sailor's house. It means that Sailor must be there. Mrs. Rivera was a math teacher grading her students' homework. Halfway through, she came across two similar homework sheets. The woman realized that one of the students had copied the work of the other because the mistakes were the same. The sheet on the right is McKenna's, and the left one belongs to Maeve. Can you tell who copied the other's homework? Look, McKenna corrected herself a couple of times. While Maeve's work is exceptionally neat, except for the mistakes. Mrs. Rivera corrected. This means that McKenna was doing her homework by herself, occasionally making typos and mistakes. And Maeve's paper is neat because she just copied McKenna's work. One day, Mrs. York invited some guests to a fancy dinner in her mansion. A couple of teenagers were running around, exploring the house. When Mrs. York went to the basement, she saw that the showcase that contained her jewelry collection was broken. One girl, Hannah, admitted she'd thrown a baseball, and it had accidentally hit the showcase. But the showcase had already been damaged by that time. Can you tell if she's lying? The crack from the baseball must be the one on the right. If the baseball was the first thing to crack the glass, the cracks would stretch to the frame of the showcase, but they only reached the other cracks, which means that the baseball was indeed secondary damage. So Hannah told the truth. Mrs. Jones was working a night shift. Her daughter Venus wanted to invite a friend to sleep over, but Mrs. Jones didn't allow it because it was a school night. When she returned, she realized that the friend had actually visited Venus. How did she understand it? There are two sets of plates and cups in Venus's room. It means that she didn't spend the evening alone. Now, how about having more fun? I'll show you some emojis, and you'll have to guess an animated movie. Let's start with an easy one. Which animated movie is it? Yes, it's Sleeping Beauty. Okay, the next one. What's your guess? Of course, it's everyone's favorite, Up. What do you have to say about this one? Animals hanging out in the forest? It's Bittersweet Bambi. Now, off to a girl's absolute obsession. Yes, that's Frozen. Let it go. Let's make it a tiny bit harder for you. It's Sweet Wally. What about the next one? It's Ratatouille. Off to the next one. What's your guess? A movie about a crazy princess with a frying pan and a chameleon? The one and only Tangled. The next one is an oldie but a goodie. It's Monsters, Inc. What can you say about this one? Coco. I'm sure you'd love it if you watched it. Okay, a crazy one for you. Think about it. Joy, sadness, disgust, fear, and anger. That's Inside Out. And the last one's for you. Don't overthink, it's pretty simple. Yes, that's Toy Story. Dakota and Tatum both failed their math test. Their mother grounded them and made them study all weekend. She occasionally walked into the teenagers' room to check on them. Take a look at the girls. Can you tell which one hadn't been studying before her mom walked in? It's Dakota, sitting on her bed reading the math book. But there's no copybook or pen nearby. No one just reads math books. Math is more about writing and doing exercises. Just look at Tatum. Andromeda came to her PE class and told her teacher that, unfortunately, she couldn't participate in class because she had broken her arm. The teacher didn't believe her and told the girl to stop fooling around. Do you think Andromeda tells the truth? Why didn't the teacher believe her? Look, her cast is put over her hoodie. It must be fake. In the middle of the day, the lights in a jewelry store went off for a minute. Once the lights were back, the seller saw that the most expensive diamond had been stolen. There were 3 customers in the store at that time. Desmond, a blind man, said that he couldn't have stolen anything. Cassidy said that while the lights had been off, she'd been standing without moving. Kira said that she'd been trying to find her cell phone to turn on the flashlight. Who stole the diamond? It must be Desmond. He pretends to be blind, but look, he has a camera. He wouldn't need it if he was really blind. Last week, Pandora went to a party without asking her dad for permission. Mr. Pond found out about this and grounded the girl for 2 weeks. There was another party planned for the next weekend, but Pandora had to stay in her room. The morning after the party, Mr. Pond came to his daughter's room and asked what she'd been doing the evening before. She said she'd been painting. Pandora got grounded for another month. Why? There are indeed painting supplies on her desk, but the picture is barely started. Mr. Pond realized that Pandora hadn't been painting for long because she had sneaked out and gone to the party. Another day, another incident. This time, another jewelry store was robbed. 2 of the most expensive wedding rings were stolen. It happened after the store closed. So the main suspects were the cleaning man and security guard, the only people who had the keys to the store. Detective Jane decided to visit both men, look at their houses, and figure out who stole the rings. It must be the security guy. He obviously lives with a girlfriend, and it seems like they want to get married. That's why he stole the rings. Michelle had a birthday party, and she invited several friends. Fleur didn't want to go because she didn't like being around many people. So she lied that her mom had grounded her and made her clean her room. The next day, she invited Michelle to her house to study together and watch a movie in the evening. Michelle agreed. But at Fleur's house, she understood that her friend had lied to her. How? Flora's room is still messy. If she had cleaned it the day before, it'd be neat now. Three sisters, Serenity, Autumn, and Polaris, were at a party. They were offered to play a game. If they won, they'd get a good prize. There were 5 hats, 3 white ones and 2 blue ones. Each girl stood in line, one after another, and got one random hat. Serenity could see the colors of both her sisters' hats. Autumn could only see what Polaris was wearing, and Polaris couldn't see any of her sisters. Anyone could speak up and try to guess her hat's color, but it could only be one of the girls. If she got it right, they'd all win. After a while, Polaris guessed the color of her hat correctly. How did she do it? If Serenity saw blue hats, she'd be, but she didn't speak up. One of the hats she saw, Autumn realized that. If her had a blue hat, has a white one. But which means Harris realized that and said,
Lucas and Hudson are walking. Which one of them isn't very smart? It's Hudson. He's staring at the screen of his phone and can miss that cliff and fall over. Even though Lucas is blind, he still has his stick. With its help, he'll know about the edge of the cliff as soon as he reaches it. He's safe. Opal is spending a vacation climbing the mountains. Karis is climbing Everest. Can you tell which one of them isn't smart? It's Opal. Look, she's forgotten about the safety rope and is climbing without it. Not good. Gabriel and Archer are bloggers who take selfies in dangerous places. This time, Gabriel is taking a selfie while surfing a huge wave, and Archer has chosen to take one while standing on the edge of the bridge above the lake. Who is not being careful? It's Gabriel. They're both doing very risky things, but at least Archer has some people around who can help him if something happens. Gabriel is alone in the ocean. It's a very early morning after a party. Egan and Bradley are driving their children to college. Can you tell who's not smart? Egan. His son isn't even in the car. Delilah and Ellery are on vacation. Both of them decided to learn something new. Delilah is skiing in the forest, and Ellery is practicing skating on the lake. Who's in danger? It's Ellery. Look, the ice on the lake is cracking, and there's no one around to help her. She should get out of there as fast as possible. Ariana and Eliza are getting ready for a barbecue party they're hosting. Ariana is making salads outside, and Eliza is decorating the house and the garden. Who's not being smart? It's Ariana. While she's busy with the salads, the meat is going bad in the sun. Karis, a mother of 4, returned home and saw that all the teenagers were quietly doing their own stuff. The oldest one, Amanda, was playing Uno, Gabriella was reading, Haven was painting. What was Ainsley doing? Ainsley was playing Uno with Amanda. Take a look at these guys and tell who is behaving stupidly. All the guys on the left, they will all fall in the end. The only guy who will stay on the tree is the one on the right. Detective Callum was spending his holiday in Hawaii. He was having his evening coffee on the terrace when he heard some noise and a scream. The balcony door of the room next to his was open, so he walked in and asked what had happened. A young actress, Chanel, was staying there. She said some man dressed in black and wearing a mask broke into her room and tried to take her away. She screamed and the criminal ran away, disappearing in the hallway. The actress asked Detective Callum to find the man immediately. But the detective said Chanel could try to fool someone else, and he'd rather return to his coffee. Why didn't he believe the girl? Look at the door of the actress's room. Lots of boxes are blocking it. If the man had indeed run out of the door, he'd have pushed all the stuff out of his way. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to open it. The girl just tried to make up some drama to get media attention. Adam came to his PE class and told the teacher that, unfortunately, he couldn't work out. He broke his arm the other day. But Adam had a bad reputation. The teacher didn't believe him and told the guy to stop fooling around. Do you believe Adam? Look, he has a cast on his arm, but it's placed over his jacket. It must be fake. Mrs. Miller reported that someone in the neighborhood had run up to her and stolen her bag. The authorities interrogated all the neighbors. Bryce said he had been away. I came home less than a minute ago. Arden said she'd spent all day at home and hadn't been outside. Easton said he had taken his dog for a walk, but he didn't steal anything or see anything strange. The authorities arrested one person. Who? They arrested Bryce. He said he'd just come home, but the water in the pot on the stove is boiling. He must have been at home for a while already. Ames worked in a clock store. One day he called the police. When they arrived, Ames told them he had been working when the electricity suddenly went off. He tried to solve the problem by himself first, then he called the police. They soon figured out what had happened, and the lights were on again. Ames immediately checked the cash desk. Apparently, while the lights were off, someone broke into the store and stole all the money. But the police didn't believe him and arrested the man. Why? In the store, there were mechanical and electric clocks, but the difference between the time they display is just 10 minutes. Mechanical clocks don't stop when the electricity is off. It means that the lights were off only for about 10 minutes. Ames must have switched the electricity off by himself and then called the police. Nelson was a writer. He was always disturbed by teenagers gathering outside his house and couldn't focus. One day, the man called the police. When they arrived, he said someone had thrown a stone at his office window. He asked the police to officially prohibit the teenagers from coming anywhere close to his house. But the detective didn't believe him. Why? Look, the glass is broken at the bottom, but this part of the window is protected by the balcony outside. Nelson must have broken the window himself to accuse the teenagers. A family was on vacation, and they had no idea what day it was. Dad said, I'm pretty sure it's either Monday or Tuesday. Mom added, all I know is that it wasn't Wednesday yesterday. Jake said, it must be Wednesday, or the weekend. Sienna was in doubt. Maybe it's Friday. Ruby said, Friday is tomorrow. Can you tell what day it is if only one statement is true? According to Dad, it's Monday or Tuesday. According to Mom, it's any day other than Thursday. So it might be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. Jake is sure it's Wednesday, Saturday, or Sunday. Sienna claims it's Friday, and according to Ruby, it's Thursday. The only day that is mentioned only once is Thursday. It means Ruby is right. Paige and Quinley were sisters. They were hanging out together in their room. Quinley had a crush on a guy from her school. She decided to write him a letter. Paige thought it was a bad idea, but Quinley wouldn't listen to her. Once she was almost done, Quinley went downstairs to get some tea. When she returned, the letter was gone. Paige said that a gust of wind suddenly blew in and the letter flew out of the window. But Quinley didn't believe her and asked Paige to give her the letter back. How did she figure out her sister had taken the letter? When the wind blows inside a room from the outside, nothing can possibly fly out of the window. Colton got into an accident and had memory loss. Kennedy and Isla both claimed to be his girlfriend. They took the guy to the place where they had their first date. Each of the girls hoped Colton would decide she was his real girlfriend. Have you figured out who the guy dated? Look, there are initials painted on the tree, saying C plus I. It means Colton's girlfriend is Isla. In a hotel, someone robbed a rich gentleman. The only witness was Joseph, a cleaning man working in the hotel. He was tidying a room nearby at the time of the robbery. The detective asked the man if he had seen anything. Joseph said, "When I heard the noise, I was going to enter the room, but then the door opened and hit me on the head. I couldn't see for a while." Joseph even showed the police officer a bruise on his forehead. The detective didn't believe Joseph, though, and arrested him for assisting the robber. Why? The door couldn't hit Joseph because it opens inwards, so he lied. After an accident, Karis was staying in the hospital. Only relatives were allowed to visit her. But 3 guys wanted to see the girl: her boyfriend, a classmate who was in love with her, and her brother. Each of them said he was her brother. Take a look at the guys' identity cards and try to figure out who her brother is. Her brother must be Philip. The age difference between Karis and Colton is 4 months, and between Karis and Nero, 5. Such an age gap is too small for them to be siblings. Maddox came to the police station to report his cousin Damon. The guy asked Maddox if he could stay with him for a couple of days. In the evening, Damon asked the host to bring him some fruit from the basement. When Maddox went there, Damon locked him inside. There was no electricity and no light in the basement, and Maddox didn't have a single gadget with him that could help him out. 2 days later, at 4 a.m., he heard his cousin drive away. It was only later that day that he managed to get out, thanks to a postman. Maddox found out that all his money had been stolen. But the police officers didn't believe him. Why? Maddox said he hadn't had any gadgets to check the time. It was also too dark to see anything on a regular clock. Then how could he figure out when exactly his cousin drove away?